Hello everyone, welcome back. So this is the render. I did three versions, wide, mid, and close-up, and you can see we're getting all the details that we were hoping to get, and I'm pretty happy with the overall result. The only thing is we're not seeing too much of the refraction and that the refractive component, but I also think the reflection is very strong, and there is no different. The technique is the same. I don't have anything new to add. It's just a matter of tweaking the underneath layer, the ocean bottom, and to give that a unique color so that we get to see spots, but we also want them to provide and help contribute to these colors. Okay, so I'm also using the ACES LUT, and I'm doing some exposure, white balance. Yeah, this looks cool. And desaturating the colors as well. This is a bit dangerous because if we have like a green tint or anything like that, we're gonna lose that. So we have to make sure that we tweak everything accordingly. And I'll leave that up to you guys. The next thing I wanted to show is how we get those the cusp maps into the shader, how we can use them to drive various things. So let's go to the ocean, and remember that we're storing them in the alpha channel. Now the large masks I don't care too much about. These layers I don't care too much about because I don't want to use cusp from them, but I want to use the cusp from this. Now let's see how we access this. If we look at this, it says color, but it's giving us RGBA, and there is no way to access this. And to access the alpha channel that stores the cusp, we're going to use a different node called RS color splitter. Color splitter. And what it does is it breaks a 4 float into RGBA, and this is the guide that we want. So I'm going to connect this, and I'm going to go to the render settings. I'm going to turn back the settings to testing mode, and I'm going to hit render, and all I want to see now is the grid. There we go. I'm also going to lower the displacement amount back to 4 and 6, and this is the cusp. Now we have to be very careful because we're looking at this map in a different color space, and this is the actual information that is available in the shader. Okay, so this is the values. We shouldn't be looking at it like this or like this. We should see it as a linear value. So that's our cusp, but remember that's the cusp from the smallest layer. Now I want the cusp from the mid. Let's render. So that's the cusp from the mid. Sorry, not that one. This one. And I made this mistake on purpose. I plugged it into the mix here, and this float mixer mixes 3x3. It doesn't mix a 4x4, and so when we do the split here, it's not going to give us what we want. We are going to have to rebuild the mixing for these values separately. So let's do that. I'm going to copy this node. I need both of them, and then I'm going to use a scale, a mix, an RS mix. This is for float only. And I'm going to connect that, and then use the same mixer. And now if I preview this, the cusp should be mixed, and this is very, very important because we want the areas to map correctly. Now I'm going to add this to the small details, and let's hit render, and now everything should be together. Great. I'm going to use a color node, and I'm going to multiply. Let's do color correct. It doesn't have a multiplier. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use an RS color mix, and I'm gonna mix this white with a different color, and that's going to be blue, something like that. And the mix amount is this, and this way, let's set this to blue, blue, 0, and let's take a look. Yep, so that's our blue color, and let's desaturate that. And I want it to be darker. I'll explain why. I'm gonna copy and do the same thing here, and I'm gonna make this a brighter blue with more saturation, and I'm going to use an RS add vector to combine these two colors. Now we have these nice coloration. Now we have to be careful with this value because it can be dangerous. So I'm going to connect that into the diffuse color, and what I want to do is to introduce some diffuse where those areas are. And we don't have any diffuse, so let's set this to 0.15, and let's hit render. And I think it's changing. Yeah, it's changing. Let's set this to 1. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna reduce the reflection amount. Okay, so we have our diffuse, and I'm gonna increase this. I'm gonna let's do a color correct node, and let's restore the reflection. Actually, I don't want 1. I'm gonna set this to 0.8, and let's interactively take a look at this. Okay, so we have some diffuse, and we're looking at the colors in linear mode. So let's check them out in sRGB, and that's our diffuse color. I'm gonna reduce this to 0.2, and see, now we're getting some nice variation there. 0.4, and I want to introduce some saturation to this. Something like that. And now if we turn on the displacement, I will do a test with and without. So let's turn this off, and let's connect our displacement. And I prefer to use the mid camera because it has a decent balance of reflection and refraction. This one is very aligned to the ocean, and I typed it wrong. Mid. And you can see there's coloration here. So let's stamp this image, and let's set the material, the diffuse weight, to 0, and hit render so we can compare both. So with and without. And you can see it's adding all these breakups. Now again, we have to be very careful with this amount, and it's something that you see a lot in stormy oceans, not so much in this type, but I'm going to introduce it a bit. Now another thing I want to do is I want to also reduce or change the amount of refraction based on that. So I'm going to use another mix, and I'm going to combine both of them. So I'm going to combine this and this, and I'm going to mix them here, and let's do a refraction color. So refraction color, and I'm gonna set the diffuse to 0 so we don't confuse them. We don't confuse the values. And right now, let's set this. It's an RS color mix. Sorry, mix. And this is the bias. It's the result. And I'm gonna set this to red and green, so I can see it clearly what's happening, and then we'll tweak from there. So let's hit interactive rendering. And again, we have to be very careful. If we have desaturation here, it's gonna mess with these values. So let's look at it in sRGB. And it's fine if you don't want to render in ACES. It's much easier. It just gives you a little bit more control over the final image, and with this options here. So okay, let's take a look. Let's turn off the reflection and only look at the refraction. Sorry. So set this to 1. And I think there is red. Yep. So, but because it's the underneath layer is blue, it doesn't have too much red. That's why. So I want this color to be blue like that, and I want this color to be like this. And let's turn. It's very saturated now, so we'll tweak it. And let's introduce the reflection back, and some of the diffuse. And I'm gonna lower the refraction to 0.6, maybe 0.5, and this to 0.1. And let's add some AUV. So if we go under the output here, AV, I'm gonna hit the plus button, and it's doing them interactively. So I'm gonna take a look at the refraction. That's the AUV I need, and then the reflection. So there's two. The specular lighting is the reflection of any light, and then we have a reflection, which is the actual reflection. Okay, so let's see. So that's the reflection again. It's the ocean reflecting itself. The specular is the reflection of the environment, and I think it's too much. I think we're getting too much reflection based on this angle. So I'm going to set this to 0.3, maybe even 0.2, and this is going to make it drop off quickly. So I like this better. I like to have darker areas here. And then for the refraction, it's gonna just distort the underneath layer. That's what the index is going to affect. And I think the colors are not great at the moment, so let's change them. Okay, I'm gonna desaturate the other one. This is also affected by the is also going to be affected by the color of our noise, but so far I think it's working. I like this. And let's take a look at the beauty, and let's turn on ACES, OCIO, and tweak this a bit. Let's not desaturate the colors. Yeah, something like that. And then again, after we do this, we have to tweak things back. So we can lower the amount of reflection. And this is another thing, is the stormier or the more distorted the ocean is, the less reflection you get. So if you want to convey that it's that the ocean is very windy, you also would want to reduce the amount of reflection and maybe increase the roughness as well. So that's going to give it, you know, like a hard look, as if it's been distorted a lot. So I'm going to lower this to 0.1 and 0.05, and we're seeing now through more of the reflection, and I think it's very saturated. So let's tweak it a bit more. And we should see variation as well. So if I turn off, yeah, it's there. If I turn off this, we should, yeah, it's there. You can see the refraction now, it's behaving differently. And so that's going to add a huge amount of realism to the scene as well. And we're getting the spots that we wanted from the beginning. I think the underneath color could be better now. Yeah, see, just a tiny bit of hue shift or a blue shift makes a huge difference. And again, as you can see, there's nothing, I'm not doing anything fancy now, just tweaking the colors. Okay, that's pretty much it. That's how we read in the data from the shader, from the maps, and we mix them. And I use that to use the cusp to vary the refraction color to introduce some diffuse. Let's turn it back on, and that's pretty much it. We can add other noise patterns if we wanted to. So I'm gonna copy an existing map that I like, or I already tweaked. So let's I'm gonna connect this. I will show what the map looks like. So this is the noise map, and again with the color correction. So this is how it looks like, and this area is showing us more continuous pattern, but it has a lot of breakups. And what I'm going to use this for is to vary the reflection amount. Now we have to be very careful with this, because yeah, it can make a huge difference. It can change the look quite a bit. So the reflection amount we want currently is 0.5. So let's say we want to vary them between 0.7 and 0.5. In here, I'm going to set the min and max, the new range min, to 0.4, 0.45 and 0.77. And then for the input, let's connect this. So this is the values, and then for the input we can go in the negative, we can go in the positive to make it you know, to increase the variation between the two, between the colors. We don't have to be that aggressive. And now I'm going to use this to drive the reflection weight. Another thing that could help with let's change this. Another thing that could help with you see them here now. Another thing that could help with this is also using the same information here to multiply the bump or tweak the bump, and it's going to give us, it's basically going to help with conveying that we have wind variation, but this by itself helps already. Another thing that we could do with this noise, and maybe let's copy it and do an offset like that, is I'm going to use, remember that if we change the index of reflection, let's say I'm going to set it to 10. See how it looks like a metal surface, okay? And what we can do with this is we can vary the index of reflection to make it reflective more in this area versus this area, and this is gonna give it the illusion that, hey, we have more wind happening here without having to do the displacement trick. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna use this new noise. It's very similar. And where's the IOR for the reflection? This should be connected. Refill IOR. Yep, this one. And I'm gonna change the amount to go between 1 to 5 and 1 5. Maybe 1. Yeah, something like that. And now we're getting even more variation. Let's flip this, set it to 2 and 1.2. So we make these areas even more reflective if we wanted to. And not exactly this, but it's being broken up by another noise. If we want to use the same noise, we could do that as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is we can introduce another noise. Or sometimes you see a cloud being casted onto the ocean effect, and I don't want to do this here, but what we could do is we can export, we can create noise patterns. So I'm gonna paste this here, and you see now we have noise pattern. It's the same noise that ships with Redshift. There's nothing fancy. And maybe I can increase the coordinate, put to 5, something like that. And what we can do is we can export this as a custom AOV, and we can use it in Nuke later to do color variation if we wanted to. We can actually export multiple maps, and let's say this is red. I'm going to copy this and do an offset. I'm going to make it green, and I'll have this here like that. I'll make this green. And let's change the coordinate. Just a different map. I'm going to copy this. And let's connect this here. And this one is going to be blue. And we can change the noise itself. So frequency scale, maybe complexity is less, more distortion. And then I'm going to create an add node, or RS add vector. Let's see. Yeah, RS add vector. And I'm gonna add these two together and these two together, and now we have an RGB mask like that. And in Nuke we can switch between red, green, and blue. And that's gonna give us 3 different masks that we can use. Another thing that we could do is we can export the masks that we use for the diffuse. So if I plug this into here, we can export this as an AOV. The way we do that is using a store color to AOV. So store color to AOV, and I'm gonna connect the beauty, which is this main shader, and then I'm gonna call this cusp. And the cusp mask is going to be this one. And then I'm going to connect the second one, which is the noise. I'm going to call this noise. And let's plug this here onto the surface. Now if we go in the, I should probably have done this in a separate video, but if I hit the plus button to add an AOV, I can set this to custom. And here all I have to do is type in the name of the AOV, or the whatever we stored. And if we look at cusp now, you see it's added and it contains our mask. And the other one we made, I can't remember the name. So the other one is noise. Let's go back and add a noise for that. Let's hit the plus button. It's a custom AOV. And let's call it noise. And if we switch, that's our noise. And the last thing I want to add is a mask. So inside this AOV input, I'm going to set this color to red, and I want to have 3 colors. This is for later. I can have the ocean be red, the ship be blue, and the cliff be green, for example. And I could call this masks. And right now it's set to red. And later we can add other objects. Sorry. Set this to custom. And type in masks. Yeah, and now we have a red color, and you can see the ship doesn't have anything. So let's go to the ship, and let's do star